How good is Junseth at singing?
Hey, everybody. I heard people paid for this.
So we always have him on the podcast, but we don't actually want to talk to him about Bitcoin.
No.
We just want to hear him sing.
This is a big room. Have you ever done a live show?
We did a little one in Nashville last year. That was like a first test.
All right.
Now we're preparing to do a run. This is the next proper test.
Okay.
There's a little special thing about this one this evening. So does anyone know the reason why I started a podcast? Does anyone know who inspired me? Motherfucker's here.
Oh, wow.
So for those who don't know, you ever seen one of those creepy films where someone tries to steal somebody's life? I couldn't do the vegan ultra athlete version, so I did the fat degenerate Bitcoin version. But I met Rich in Italy 6 years ago. It's all a blur. And Rich was put on an event. It was a yoga, like meditation, vegan retreat.
He looks very flexible to me. I've never seen him before.
He looks younger than me. And it was an amazing thing. And at the end of it, he might have said this to everyone, but he was like, if you're ever in LA, look me up. So I got back to Bedford and like immediately booked a flight to LA. I said, oh, hi, I'm here. And I was like, I want to be a podcaster. How do you do it? Rich sent me a course and the equipment I needed it. I booked, I went on Amazon and bought it all. And then coincidentally, Luke Martin's here behind him. I contacted Luke and I was like, I want to make a show. And Luke said, let's do it. And both people are coincidentally here. So I'm very proud of that.
Nice.
It's very cool. So this is our first one of these live events. I feel under a lot of pressure with Rich here because he's like my podcast idol.
He looks very non-judgmental though, Peter.
He is. He's here judging me. So this is the first of many live events we want to do. I think it's a really cool thing to get out and see some of you. We asked Junseth to come in. You all know Danny, producer Danny.
What up?
Jeremy's on the camera somewhere. We don't really have any house rules, but we've learned what works and what doesn't. I shouldn't run the ticketing on the door, is one of the things. But anyway, listen, what we're going to do, me and Junseth are going to have a chat about Bitcoin and some Bitcoin stuff. I'm going to go totally off script with all of it. And then we'll open up the floor. We'll do some Q&A. And if you don't have many questions, we'll go back to
singing.
We'll do a bit of Bitcoin karaoke. And,
it's fun.
And then we'll go from there. So how you been, Junseth?
Before we start,
I'm enjoying this tradition.
Can I just shout something out? If we're filming everything, so if anyone doesn't want their face on camera, can you put your hand up and we'll try and make sure you blurred out in the video? We got one. That's good.
Yeah. And if you haven't got a seat, I'm sorry. I think a few people have turned up without tickets and walked in, but so be it.
This isn't great for my OPSEC.
Steal this CD. I believe in that. How are you, man?
Good. I feel like this is becoming a tradition now. So like, I think this is episode 4, I think I've done with you.
4 or
3.
5? 4 or 5?
4.
Junseth is the original Bitcoin podcaster. If you've never listened to Bitcoin Uncensored, it's still the original, still the best Bitcoin podcast ever.
Best podcast ever. I think it was. No, it's been a while though. I think we haven't done it since 2017. And then Chris and I famously didn't talk for many years, and then we came together on your show and did a show together. And then
in Miami, Florida,
you came to Fort Lauderdale. We huddled in a room, took our clothes off.
We took our clothes off
and like sat there at a little table, about that big.
The thing that makes this weirder, we didn't used to video our podcast then.
Yeah,
so we literally just took our shirts off and made a show. And Junseth is an inspiration to all who did it. But yeah, this is like number 4, man.
Yeah. This is fun though. It's weird to see a lot of people in the room.
It's weird to see people who actually care.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So so we were going to talk about Bitcoin and democracy, but I think it would be ridiculous if we didn't actually start with Bitcoin and ordinals.
Oh, everyone's talking about ordinals now, yeah.
Everyone's talking ordinals. Yeah. I had a hot discussion with Rob Hamilton today.
I heard.
Lucky there was a table between us. Got a bit feisty.
I heard you were an ass.
No, I was factual.
So
should we explain what ordinals are to everyone in the room?
Yeah, sure. So ordinals, as I understand them, and I guess Rob is here so he can correct me if I'm wrong, but ordinals are basically inscriptions, pictures that you put that are permanently in the blockchain, and they're contained in the signature header, I believe, or in the header of, Rob says kind of, but they're in the signature section, so they're permanent. But they're prunable, and there's a lot of controversy because a lot of people think that this is blockchain bloat. and that this is not what Bitcoin's for. I think you might be one of them.
I'm. If you say one side is completely against it, one side is completely for it, I'm go the center ground. I'm just to the left. I'm just kind of against it.
Why are you against it?
I think what it is that the more I've done this show, the more I've made the show, it's been about how if we're trying to create the best form of money, if the goal is let's create the best money, and as I go around and do podcasts and films and meet people, I always say we're trying to make the best form of money. I was asking myself, does this make Bitcoin better money, net better or net worse? And I think I just come out on net worse.
Yeah. I think it makes it, I think it does nothing. I think this is a Beanie Baby. I think it's a point in time.
By the way, how many Beanie Babies do you own?
I have a lot of Beanie Babies. I'm a Beanie Baby collector. I collect them for the reason that for the same, there's actually a Financial Times article about my Beanie Baby collection.
This is a true story.
I've been collecting Beanie Babies for a really long time. I was, back in the 90s, as a kid, I was like making my dad run around and, to get the teeny beanies and everything else. But for me, Beanie Babies are an important reminder, particularly about collectibles, that you don't become attached to things. I remember back in the 90s, I would watch these people go buy Beanie Babies and they would tell me like Humphrey the Camel is going to pay for your college someday. You know, they'd say this to their like husbands or their wives. Like, that's why I'm collecting all these. And, they didn't. So after... and now I have this little blog I run. It's a Beanie Baby blog, and I get emails probably 3 to 5 a day of people sending me pictures of their collections and asking me how much they're worth. And the answer every time is $5 to all of them. And I'm not kidding. They have stored these things for 40 years, for 20 some years, 25 maybe 30 years, and they have these 3 by 4 plastic bins. They'll have like 10 of them filled with the same Beanie Baby. And it's like every day, 3 to 5 of these emails. So Beanie Babies for me are this kind of important reminder that you don't stay attached to things. And for me, it's been an important lesson, particularly as like a lot of this NFT stuff has happened and now Ordinals have happened. I think a lot of people look at Ordinals. There's people making money on this. They're selling these Satoshis at a premium, and they're making money selling these Satoshis. And I think there's a lot of FOMO. It's easy in the space to get excited and feel like you're missing out. But I look at this stuff and I'm like, I've seen this before. This is just Beanie Babies. It's temporary, might last 5 years, might be 10 years, doesn't matter. Ordinals to me aren't important and they're just a blip. And I also think it's a really good thing because Bitcoin is supposed to be an anti-fragile system. And if Ordinals are bad, then this doesn't work. If Ordinals break Bitcoin, Bitcoin is broken.
The thing I push back against that is I think Ordinals came by mistake.
Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like if you find a hole in Bitcoin, I think as a good Bitcoiner, it's your obligation to exploit it. Stick your finger in it and like wiggle it around.
Maybe fix it.
It's up to someone else to fix. You don't know what the fix is. Here's the thing. There's no specific fix, right? Like you think about the fixes to Ordinals. We can fork. That's a terrible option. What do we like? Reduce the chain size? I don't know. Like maybe add some opcodes and allow drive chain or something like that. I don't know. Like what's the fix? And the only way that we'll know is by fighting it out in the community. So it has to be a public battle. And not just that, like it could very well be that people are going to dedicate themselves to the fight for or against Ordinals. And what we find out is that the fees and maybe the next bull run or whatever the hell it is, that the fees start taking care of it. Like these things are going to be very expensive to mint in a world where people are using the chain.
Let's have a show. Who likes Ordinals?
Gays.
Come on. Who thinks they make Bitcoin better money? There's not a single person. I think they're too embarrassed to say.
Well, who thinks they make Bitcoin worse money? Oh, okay, 2.
Oh, so people just don't want to put their hands up.
I just think it's...
Who doesn't like putting their hands up?
When I watch this, who's neutral on Ordinals? There you go.
Yeah.
I think that's the right position. Like I think neutrality on this is just sit in the middle and just watch it happen. Like there's a lot of things in Bitcoin that I've watched over the years that have like been big fights. Way back in the day, Counterparty XCP was a big one. Colored coins. Luke Dash Jr. putting the Eligius prayer in the blockchain many years ago. Go look at those discussions in Bitcoin Forum. People were really, really mad. I put Genesis 1 in the blockchain many years ago for lots of people have done this. You can write messages on Bitcoin. It's been for years. You've been able to do this stuff.
Try and break it.
Well, Bitcoin is there to break. Try to break it. I dare you. This is what everyone tells, like I talk about like the regulation of New York. People come up to me like, oh, New York's about to regulate Bitcoin. They're not going to let miners in. I'm like, okay, great. There's never been a better time for governments to regulate Bitcoin than now. Try it. Go ahead. Let's see what happens. If Bitcoin breaks because of regulation, if Bitcoin breaks because of ordinals, if Bitcoin breaks because Luke Dash Jr. puts a prayer on it, if it breaks because XCP does whatever, like if it breaks because of these, this doesn't work. It's not an anti-fragile system. Either this is money or it's not. And if it's like a precious little baby, then it doesn't work. There's no other chain that's tested. And that's the thing, like, this is why, like, Bitcoin maximalism for me is sort of a bit of a sacred cow, because no other chain has been tested or will be tested to the degree that Bitcoin is and has been. And there's absolutely no other chain that can withstand the scrutiny of Bitcoin.
Goes back to what Harry Suddick says.
Everything's good for Bitcoin.
Everything's good for Bitcoin.
Everything's good for Bitcoin. He's right.
Apart from Bitcoin dying.
Well, if Bitcoin dies, it's good for us. We should know. You know, a lot of us have dedicated a large portion of our time to caring about this, and it's stupid to care about. It's cash money, right? Like this year, we're in a bar. We're at Pubkey. Shout out to Pubkey. And this is a bar dedicated to cash money. We call it Bitcoin, but that's kind of stupid. Like, yeah, like you ever been to a bar? Like, we're like really into cash money, bro. Like, this is really like that's what we're into. This is like that's what Bitcoin is. And the reason that it's kind of like we're all into it is because like no one else thinks it's cash money but us. Like we all know the secret. This is cash money. It's great. So like we come here together, we high five each other about how we know it's cash money. Well, when Bitcoin is like, if there's a world in which Bitcoin is treated as cash money by everybody, if everybody understands that, this is kind of gay. And I mean that in the pejorative sense. Like we're all like we're going to go to Pubkey like, yeah, Bitcoin. No, we're just going to be like, this is what I buy and pay my taxes with and stuff. And like, if that's what we do, that's what we do. But if not, then, this is a subculture right now. And it's a subculture because we are touching this dirty stuff. It is dirty. It's money.
It's
Money's
definitely a
always been dirty.
subculture.
At the moment.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work if it remains a subculture. Like, I think everyone here is hoping that Bitcoin someday is not a subculture.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make plenty of solid arguments that the tentacles are kind of stretching out beyond being a subculture.
I think it has to, right? If this works, it has to. And that's, and I don't really care how it comes in. Like, ordinals are really interesting because if you look at the way that the community has responded, we have a bunch of these new people coming in. Previous to this, they were in beep coins and, they were in shit coins. They were in Ethereum.
You can say shit.
I know that. I just want to. We don't swear on this podcast. They were into shit coins. They were on Ethereum or whatever. They were doing their NFT stuff. I know a couple guys that are like doing the ordinal stuff. They're shilling them. They're selling them. They're car salesmen. They're like, they got the clubhouse. We were sitting there the other day. Someone described it like one of these guys like has a trench coat. He opens up like, want an ordinal? So like these guys are all doing the. They're shilling their ordinals, and these Ethereum guys are coming here. They're buying them, and I've heard that a lot of them are like sitting in the background, being like, "Yeah, we're going to dump these on these dumb Bitcoiners at some point." And all the Bitcoiners are like, "Welcome to Bitcoin. We're not buying that shit, but like, welcome. We're glad you're here." And what these Ethereum guys are doing is they're now being tricked into like running full nodes. They're running full nodes. They're running full nodes. They're supporting the network. They're buying Bitcoin. Literally, they're paying more money for a Satoshi than a Satoshi is worth. Like you can sell a Satoshi for like 100 Satoshis, like weird.
Yeah, but that's no different. People collecting dollar bills with serial numbers on them.
Yeah, well, but isn't that weird that we have like numismatism in Bitcoin?
Yeah, but hold on, you collected Beanie Babies.
Yeah,
everyone has a thing they collect.
Yeah, but I collected them after they were popular. So that's like that. Like that's what you want to do. Like if you want to buy ordinals, if you want to buy a sub 10,000 ordinal or a sub 500 ordinal, wait 20 years. Do what I did, and then like they'll be worth nothing. But this is a weird moment in Bitcoin's history because what we're seeing now is fees on the blockchain are going up. We've always known that fees have to go up. We don't know how. The drive chain guys think that drive chain is going to drive fees up and we need to have merge mining. Maybe they're right. Other people have other solutions. Other people don't care. They're neutral on it. I tend to be, with regard to fees, the way that I am with everything in Bitcoin. And I think there are more things in heaven and earth than even you can conceive of. Horatio, is that the famous quote? I have that attitude towards Bitcoin. There are all these problems that we have in Bitcoin. There are all sorts of them, thousands and thousands of problems, whether it's fees, whether it's the construction of transactions or, whatever the heck it is, the speed of downloading the chain, so many problems. And the solution is not the one that you've conceived of. There are a lot of, like, if you've conceived of it, so has someone smarter than you. And there's a lot of people smarter than you. I don't know who you are. Maybe you're Albert Einstein. Maybe I'm wrong. But like for 99% of us, there are a lot of people who are smarter than us, and they've already conceived of this. So the solutions are not going to be simple because even the smartest people here don't know them. And like, you know, we complain about something like fees. It seems like the solution might be, I don't know, drive chain where you have merge mine, or the solution might be like changing the way that the transaction, like requiring that a normal transaction have higher fees or something like that, whatever the case is. You might have 1,000 solutions. Or a standard transaction might have higher fees, like something like that. So like maybe those are the solutions. But who in this room thought that maybe the solution was allowing us to put a picture of dick butt on the blockchain?
50 Bitcoin for that dick butt.
I know that. And American Hodl's here, actually, in the audience. He was offered that dick butt for 1 Bitcoin, and he refused to buy it. So he feels stupid. I'm putting him on blast.
But I tell you, one of the things that I did find interesting was when Rob earlier was explaining to me that there is a big difference between NFTs on Bitcoin than on Ethereum, in that the NFT is literally, the JPEG is on chain, whereas it's just a hash on something like Ethereum pointing to a database record. So do you think this will actually steal market share away from these?
I don't care. It's so stupid. It's so dumb. I mean, like, it doesn't matter where they are. There are actually on-chain algorithmic NFTs on Ethereum. Who gives two farts? Like the rocks, they are algorithmic, they're random, they're inscribed on chain on Ethereum. Fine, okay. Well, okay, so like now you have this stuff. People keep telling me about all the great uses of ordinals. Like, I can inscribe JavaScript code on ordinal or in an ordinal on Bitcoin, and then you can own the Satoshi. And I'm like, okay, so like if I have the Satoshi, then I'll own the JavaScript, like it'll be mine. Well, no, I have the Satoshi with the transaction that like anyone can see it. It's on the goddamn blockchain. Like this is stupid. I can go download the dick butt. But for some reason, if Hodl had bought the Satoshi that is associated with the dick butt, then someone will pay 50 Bitcoins for it. It's stupid. This isn't going to last forever. It's a temporary moment in Bitcoin's history. And like, I don't know if it's the time, the amount of wars that I've sat through in Bitcoin, the fights I've watched, but I just can't give two wits about it. Like this is going to be so short-lived. Even if it's 5 years from now, this is a moment in Bitcoin's history. People are just excited that they found a way to do something with Bitcoin that, you know, we didn't think you could do. But you could always do some weird stuff. Like if you wanted to pay enough, you could have encoded images into like P2SH transactions or anything else. It's just, it would have been $100,000. Like it just would have been really expensive, you know? You want to put like all the Bitcoin Uncensored episodes on Bitcoin, you could do it. It would take you a few years probably and like different transactions, and like you'd have to fill up entire blocks, and it would just be very, very expensive. But because of the way that we've done the SegWit discount, the ordinals are cheap. And it's a moment in history.
An irrelevant moment in history.
An irrelevant, irreverent, hilarious moment that has created the funniest political factions I've ever seen. Like, should we or should we not put dicks on the blockchain? That's like the question. And you know, this is a commons, and commons are made for putting dicks on. Rome knew it. We know it. I said this on Bitcoin Uncensored. This is what a commons is. I said on Bitcoin Uncensored many years ago, and you can go back and listen if you can find the episodes, which are hard to find. They're collectibles. I said a blockchain is a commons, and the goal of a commons, the commons that will be the best commons, the one that you will bring your sheep to feed on the grass of, will be the one that manages how many dicks are on their blockchain. And like Ethereum, full of dicks. There are dicks everywhere on Ethereum. Bitcoin's getting some dicks now, but like it's a temporary moment in history, and like Bitcoin has the best dick management, and that's why this blockchain matters.
I love that there's people in the bar just having a drink.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Rich, you're so proud of me right now, aren't you?
But it is a commons, and like that is like the thing is, commons are for the lowest common denominator, which means it is for the dicks.
Do you think,
that's where it goes.
Do
It
you
has
think-
to go there.
do you think part of this is a period where nothing really much has happened?
We're bored. Yeah, Bitcoiners are bored. This is graffiti.
Yeah.
Yeah, we like graffiti. Like some graffiti is art, and some is dick butts. But like, no, it is. Bitcoiners are bored right now. There's nothing happening. The price is stagnant. When you, I mean, this is like the idle hands of the devil's playground. Leave a bunch of techno nerds who have infinite amounts of time, who probably have more money than they should because they've been holding Bitcoin for too long, and you give them time and like a platform that they can do anything they want on, you get dick butts on the blockchain. That's just the way it works. Like every time that like Bitcoin's bear markets are for building. Some things are very relevant, and like there may be things that ordinals are good for. I don't know. There might be. Probably not. Maybe it's more than JPEGs. Like I'm happy that the technology is there, that people can explore and try things. Maybe we see inscriptions of, I don't know, like anchor links for torrents, but you could do that in op return. There's all sorts of ways. Like you could, there are ways to have written things on Bitcoin before. This is the first time that anyone seems to have been excited about it. I don't know why, but this is just a period. And yeah, you're right. It is because we're bored.
But do you think, therefore, there are other things we could or should be working on?
Well, Casey did the ordinal stuff, and Casey decided to spend his time doing that, right? Like this is an anarchic kind of weird place, and every developer gets to spend their time doing the thing they want. And if pictures on the blockchain are a thing that one developer thinks are important, and like, honestly, it's probably important for the reason that I think no one had realized that this might be the effects of the SegWit discount. And in Bitcoin, like irony is important, particularly when attacking the chain in a sense. When you do something that people will disagree with or think of as like a problem, it's very important to do it with irony. I think images are a good way for this to have happened. What other sorts of attacks could this cheap block space have caused? What developers saw it? Luke Dash Jr. saw this. He's been advocating for smaller blocks for a long time. Doesn't mean you couldn't put images on the chain, but it would mean that ordinals would be much more expensive to put on the chain.
Has he blocked ordinals or not?
I would imagine so, but I don't know.
He's got some kind of filter that he's been trying to get people to deploy in their nodes to prune this space. It's interesting because it brings up other discussions, stuff that we've already discussed, stuff that like we discussed on Bitcoin Uncensored, but also like other people have discussed. Like Bitcoin, one of the features of Bitcoin is its immutability. This is a thing that like we've talked about. Bitcoin is this thing that it moves forward, can't really move back. You can't unglue things from it. Once it's in there permanently. That's the idea. This is probabilistically true. It's not definitely true, but it's more than likely true, right? To the 12 nines. So Bitcoin is impossible to unwind. It's immutable. Well, certain parts of it are. What if everybody pruned these parts of the transaction thread? What if everybody did? What if everyone pruned op return? Like there are elements of the blockchain that are maybe less that are more immutable than other parts, which I think is another interesting discussion and one that's worth having. Meanwhile, like all of these people that are into ordinals, again, are running completely full nodes. And that to me is interesting, that there may have been 10,000 new nodes added or maybe 20,000 new nodes added in the last 2 weeks. And like that just strengthens Bitcoin.
Can we get a node count?
Yep.
Yes. You've been doing this for a long time. You've been around for a long time. Do you still like have passion and conviction for it, or do you tend to sit back and look at it more as an observer these days, like a commentator?
I've always viewed myself as John Madden in Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin Uncensored again was colored commentary. Color commentary. I don't mean to be offensive racially. So Bitcoin Uncensored was color commentary for the most part. I always felt like we were sitting in like a stadium watching all the players on the field, those players being like Bitcoin, shitcoins, everything else, and just like watching them fight and then just like pointing at them and laughing. And that like, I still think that that's the proper role, particularly for like non-technical people. I'm not a super technical person. My biggest competency is like fart jokes, dick butt jokes now I'm moving into, but like a lot of that's my competency. Chris was more technical than I was on the show, but like I understand Bitcoin at a more philosophical level. I do get it. Do I care about what?
Do you care about some of the ideas people have for Bitcoin are growing and becoming money that's adopted wider?
I don't care what Bitcoin does.
Do you care what Bitcoin did?
I do care a lot about what Bitcoin did. I feel very much like the biographer in some ways, or one of the biographers of Bitcoin. I know that we have something very important. I'm pretty sure. And I want to know, and I don't think that there's any of us that can command it to go in any direction one way or the other. We are here to kind of serve it in some sense. Like Bitcoin is this thing, it's amorphous. We don't really know what it's for. There's a bunch of people who looked at it like it's like Jed Clampett putting his thing in the ground and up comes oil. Like that's kind of what happened with Bitcoin. We see this thing, we're like, that's weird. What is that? And you kind of taste it and you're like, oh, it tastes like money. Weird. And like, we don't know we don't know exactly what it's good for. El Salvador is trying to see if it's good for nation states. Is it? I don't know. I was talking to a gentleman today, said that the crime in El Salvador is way down. Is it because of Bitcoin? Maybe. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of experiments that we're running and a lot of people are running that are going to teach us a lot about what Bitcoin will do. There's a lot of things that we've done in the past that teach us what Bitcoin can do. And there's a lot of people just trying, throwing shit at the wall now. We don't know what Bitcoin is. It's this pseudo invention that I think probably if Satoshi didn't do it, someone would have done it at some point, put all of these components together. It would have been constructed very similarly. And many of the things that are in Bitcoin would be in whatever that was. It would look almost exactly alike. And I don't know what it will do. But and there's no one here powerful enough to direct it in any given way. So like this thing will, I don't know, maybe it'll do remittances. We don't know. Maybe it'll remove the government from remittances. Maybe as the libertarians say, it's going to remove money from the hands of the printer, the government printer. Maybe it removes, the state from money completely. Maybe it puts in the hands of sovereign individuals all of the power. We don't know. We theorize that these are things that it can do, and we are at the beginning stages of some of the experiments that may make that stuff possible.
What would you say it has done then?
Bitcoin made it really easy for people who are addicted to drugs to get them more easily. Well, it's true though.
Like, but there's a different. Actually, there is a spin on that, which is a highly relevant point.
Yeah,
you make the joke for people addicted to drugs together, but actually, what it did is it did remove crime. Well, there's a lot of crime from the drug and the Drug Policy Alliance.
Other than that evil man Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah.
No, but
it took away the person-to-person interaction for the consumption of drugs.
The way that money works right now is that the government prints it, and they give it to the banks basically to distribute. And those banks, like libertarians and others, call this evil. I think it's somewhat neutral. Like, I don't know how else you would do it. That's called the Cantillon effect. Like, basically, those that are closest to the money printer, they get the best, they get the most from the effects of printing money. They basically get to thrive and grift off of the not numismatic value. What's it called? Well, the printing of money, right? The profits of printing money. Bitcoin has sort of a reverse Cantillon effect, where those who have been shut out of the money system, they needed something. Whether it's immigrants, whether it's people who were buying or selling drugs. So Bitcoin had this like weird thing where it started. The people that had most access to it were the people that had the least access to the Cantillon effect as a whole. So it's got this weird thing where like prostitutes got it first, drug dealers got it first, people in the inner city needed it most and got it first. And it's kind of like trickled up. And now we're at the stage where it's like, family offices are like, do I need this in my portfolio? Which is weird because that's the end of the chain.
Well, an interesting thing of that is I spoke to somebody recently and they worked on the institutional side and they said, look, there's zero interest from institutions now. They took a look and they don't like it. And I think the problems for institutions is for it to be relevant, they have to take a big bet. And to take a big bet is a huge risk. So it continues to bubble up for those, and most of those who've got the smallest amount of money because they got the least at risk.
Yes, but more than that, like institutions, when they take a big bet, we're not talking like the size of bet that many of us might think is. It's not like $10 million. Like they're not. I remember way back, it was like when Bitcoin had a market cap of $5 million. I was on a bus with a banker from Goldman Sachs, good friend of mine, and I was talking to him about Bitcoin, and I said, if I were Goldman, I would take a small position in this. It's $5 million. Like it's so small. And so like he laughs and he's like, if we were going to do anything, like we would short the whole thing. But there's no money in it. And I didn't realize then how much money they were dealing with. Like $5 million is tiny. And now what are we? We're like nearly $1 trillion market cap. But like you still can't make easily like a 5, 10, $20 billion bet. Well, half a billion or half $1 trillion market cap probably, right?
Yeah, 450
at the moment.
Yeah.
But we were at nearly $1 trillion at one
We
time.
were over like 1.2
Yeah.
at one point,
Yeah.
1.3, yeah.
So we're small. Like these institutions can't make a bet on this yet. Like, the thing is, back then when Bitcoin had a $5 million market cap, people at Goldman were laughing, and now they're actually taking seriously the possibility that at some point they might have to make a bet. They're looking at it seriously and deciding that they don't like it. Fine, that's a really different position than like, that's so small we can't do anything. Like now it's like, maybe at some point we'll have to make a bet and put this into our portfolio. It's a very different position. And Bitcoin just kind of knocking away at all of these little financial institutions. And at some point it's gonna be required that these financial institutions have some exposure, lest people won't give them their money.
It's probably weird for some of the people in here to hear that, like Bitcoin being a $5 million market cap, because they weren't around then. But
I thought that was huge. I had $10, so I thought
but like, how was it? Was it fundamentally still kind of the same? Was the community still kind of the same, or are we in a very different place now?
No. It was weirder. Here's the thing: like, to come into Bitcoin early, you have to be kind of nuts. And what's been strange to me is to watch like adults walk into Bitcoin and have people come in here who I like look respectable. They have suits on. Women came pretty late compared to the men. Like the men came first. Then women are getting here. There's like a lot of them. We're getting really competent women now in Bitcoin that are like doing things. Like this is an asset that was like high risk. The most retarded people got in first. They bought a lot of it and they held, and now they're like those same people that are like billionaires now are like peeing in bottles and holding them in hotel rooms. Like that's the level of person that was early. And now we have people who like actually they manage funds. There's people like putting together insurance companies, like real financial products are coming to this space run by real adults. And Bitcoin is seeing an evolution from the non-professional to the professional class. And I think that's really strange. It's probably necessary and good, but it's weird because, again, like Bitcoin Uncensored, the whole idea was, our idea was that we would be, we were the only ones that knew anything about this. So you had to invite us and we'd come in our underwear. And then your Goldman Sachs, like, well, you can't wear that in here. Like, then you don't get to hear about Bitcoin. And then they would be like, okay, fine. Only you can wear underwear into the boardroom. And so like, that was the idea, was like, you tell us that we're stupid for playing with this thing. Good on you. Great. You're right. We're stupid. Now you want to hear about it. Great. Oh, we'll talk to you about it, but you have to let us do our thing because you guys are the actual rubes. But the rubes are here now. And the professional class is here. And they still haven't figured it out. They have to go through their shitcoining. Shitcoining has to happen before you Bitcoin. I don't know why. It's a necessary thing. Everyone has to go through it. And so like all the professionals are here and they have to like shit on Bitcoin for a few more years because they have to lose all their money first. Just like all of us did.
Yeah.
They have to find out why Ethereum is total BS. They have to find out why Ripple is stupid. They have to find out that all of these things that they think are done on blockchain either can't be done on blockchain or Bitcoin can do. And it's going to take them a while.
I was in the Moxie the other night, just as we'd finished our a day, and I was just sat at the bar on my own, and some girl came up. She wanted to charge her phone. And she said, "Oh, what are you working on?" I was like, "I'm just doing a bit of work. I've got a podcast." I was like, "What do you do?" She said, "I work in film." I was like, "Oh, what kind of films do you make?" She said, "Oh, we're making a film about AI and the cross section with blockchain." Yeah.
Told you
I was
how.
like,
I've been predicting this next pump is going to be AI projects. And so I think that's like every pump with Bitcoin has come with a level of stupidity and another stupid thing. So a couple of years, like the last couple pumps ago, it was ICOs where everybody was going public. They weren't going public, but they were selling you crap. And all of those went to zero. This last one, it's been NFTs. So we've been debating what the next one is. I think it's going to be blockchains that promise rides to the moon, literal rides, and do AI.
no, we found out what it is, didn't we?
What's that?
The IFO.
The IFO, the initial farm offering.
Yeah, apparently
Farm?
initial farm offering.
Farm stuff is getting big now. People like that. None of these have anything to do with blockchains. And you know what's funny? Like, there's a company out there called Masterworks. You ever heard of this?
Yeah.
Masterworks started offering fractional art. Every art piece is an LLC. You can go on their website and buy it. And I looked at this site and I was like, oh, this is a blockchain company. It's very clear to me. I haven't talked to the founders, but I'd guarantee you if you talk to them, I'll bet you $1 million that idea started out as, hey guys, we could do like fractional ownership of art on a blockchain. And then as they walk through it, they realize that there actually is a business there, but it's using the traditional structures, wrapping them in an LLC, and then putting a market online and letting people trade fractional ownership in art. That's what you can do. You can do the same thing with farms. You can do the same thing with everything. But like, for some reason, this notion of the blockchain enabling this has persisted to this day. And it's absolute inanity because it has nothing to do with any of these business models other than it reflects the business model. It looks like that business model. And I think that like maybe that's where Bitcoin or blockchain has contributed, in that it opened up the minds of entrepreneurs to be able to do this fractional ownership stuff. I think there's a lot of uses for fractional ownership of a lot of things, but you don't need the blockchain for it. You just need a, MySQL database.
So where do you hope things go then? Because you've been through a lot of this, like multiple cycles. You've been through all the different kind of shitcoin projects, all the narratives that proved wrong. What do you kind of hope would happen now?
I feel like
advice.
Well, my thing here has always been like, I feel like I see the future in Bitcoin. Like when Vitalik coined the term blockchain or Bitcoin maximalist, when he coined the term Bitcoin maximalist, it was actually like a day or two after he had a debate with me and Chris on Skype. And we've always said, and I'm fairly certain because the description in that article is basically of the debate, that he was talking about us. So we always said we were the first Bitcoin maximalists, for that reason. And I think the reason that I latch on to this notion of Bitcoin winning ultimately is because it's so clear to me that none of this other stuff has any value. And it's just going to take so long. So what do I want? I want to be right about that. I think that once we can move past all of the money grubbing, grifting, and lies about what blockchains do, once we can like cut away the briar of that like just shit meadow, I think that's when we can see this technology actually begin to change the world. But until then, I think we are in a world where like I fear for the possibility of like a 1990s Albania, where like we end up all investing in, like we see trillions of dollars flow into what amount to Ponzi schemes, and the entirety of like economies getting crushed because people are chasing wealth. And if you want to know what that looks like, just look at this last time. This last time around, people were putting their money into these Ponzi's, obvious Ponzi's, Luna. And was it Mike Alfred who had the tattoo? Who's
Novogratz.
Novogratz.
Yeah.
Mike Alfred always confuses me. Mike Novogratz had the tattoo.
He confuses a lot of us.
I do, yeah. Novogratz put the Luna tattoo on his arm. And this is like a professional class investor that people have for many years told me is very smart. Maybe he is. Maybe he's the smartest guy in the world. I've been in like rooms with him, and I've the shitcoining has always bothered me because I thought a smart person would be beyond that. But he loved put it on a tattoo, so much so that he put a tattoo of it on his arm. And thousands and thousands of other people did this. There were millions and millions of dollars locked up into this. And when
Billions.
it collapsed, billions, I didn't want to say it, but
Yeah.
billions of
What was
dollars.
it, 40 billion market cap at the top? I know that's not
as much as Madoff.
Yeah.
Madoff's Ponzi was what, 40-ish billion. These people, and there's some major differences. Like, for example, Madoff took money from people who were wealthy. Luna took money from people who were wealthy that week because, like, they were all, people like me living in their mom's basement.
I'm going to challenge you on that. Madoff took money from people who weren't wealthy as well.
A lot of them, yeah. There were people that weren't wealthy, but they had their money with him for like 20 years, right? A lot of them. But he took a lot of the money he took was like people that were wealthy. And like when that collapsed, people like families that were previously very wealthy lost everything. Like royal families lost money on Madoff. In Bitcoin, there were some people like that, but in Madoff, I think that was probably the majority. In Luna, it probably is the minority of people putting money in were like these big, whales who came to Bitcoin with billions in their pocket and were just really excited and put all their money into Luna. A lot of the people in Luna were these people who came, they were retail, they put a little money in, they got rich. All of a sudden they had millions of dollars. And then when Luna collapsed, they lost everything. Well, I worry about the world where we have a Luna come along and people with real money finally get here and start throwing their money in. And when this all collapses, this Ponzi, we see a huge, just destruction of wealth. And I think that could very well happen in the next few cycles if we continue to see the scams perpetuate that we've been seeing.
Well, so that is what Elizabeth Warren said.
Yeah, but she's crazy.
She potentially, yeah, it depends how you see it. I mean, look, I think she's factually wrong on a few things, but her point was if these crypto projects get so big and they collapse, you could cause systemic risks throughout the economy. And it's a fair point to make.
She's correct, but if she cared, she would learn what the technology does. That's like when she talks about Bitcoin, she sounds like a geriatric idiot who stuck her face in a toilet for 5 years and brought it up and decided to equivocate on something that she's never heard of. Someone said Bitcoin, and she's like, "Oh, I'll have an opinion on that." I don't fucking know where she got that.
But the truth of this is, because we've been diving into this, the truth is most of these senators, their opinions come from their staffers.
I agree, but what she needs to do, if she wants to actually have an opinion on this that makes sense, that allows her to regulate in a way, that allows her to propose regulation that would matter, these people need to actually learn what the tech does.
And I disagree with her, but my empathetic side is that I know how many different issues they're having to deal with. They cannot learn every issue. That they have to have staffers who kind of come up with their opinions and policies.
Oh, yeah.
And they represent them. So we could say she should learn that, but there's so many things she should learn. I'm saying I think if we need to turn this ship around, it's about educating the staffers.
That actually might be true. That might be the attack vector for. I'm not a lobbyist, but I imagine that if you are, that's probably a pretty good suggestion. The staffers do need to learn it. I mean, the thing is the rule, you have to shitcoin before you Bitcoin. I think is pretty hard and fast, which means that we're many years away from getting competent staffers because they will have to shitcoin. They have to believe that everything is possible.
Well, they already are with the US dollar.
That's what you believe.
All right, listen. Let's open it up to the floor. We've got a lot of people. If anyone wants to ask a question, please put your hand up. And if nobody asks a question, I'll go back to Junseth.
Freddie Mercury in the back.
Don't you hate it when that happens? In Brooklyn, it's actually really good camouflage. But my question for you is talking about the real wealth destruction, Junseth, that could really destroy capital. What order of magnitude of wealth are you talking about? Because I from just friends of friends working in the industry, hearing about the number of people who lost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in FTX, not to mention Luna and the various other shitcoin collapses over the last 12 months. I'm curious, what order of magnitude of rug pull do you think would lead to that?
Well, so this is what scares me is that every time Bitcoin gets bigger, the risk gets bigger. I mean, how long have you been here? How many cycles have you been through? I don't like to call them cycles because I think that's stupid, but they kind of have been cycly for the last 10 years. So how many have you been through?
Class 2017.
Okay, class 2017, all right. So, one. Yeah, one big one, right? So
it's like most of us.
If you've been here a little longer, what you would have seen is basically every one of these cycles ends because of something happening, something collapsing. Mount Gox collapses. Leverage happens, and everyone is leveraged out, to the tits. And all of a sudden, everyone loses everything, and whatever. In this last cycle, we find out that FTX was basically propping the market up and leveraging, and all of these like wrapped Bitcoin type things are just like paper Bitcoin, right? So like there's just leverage and leverage and leverage and leverage, and it's somewhat unregulated. So what happens is every time Bitcoin pumps, the leverage enters the system, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's like this time is what 10x bigger than the previous time. So we're talking like let's say we do this again. We go from 1 trillion to 10 trillion. The amount of leverage in 10 trillion in a system that's like $10 trillion is going to be magnitudinously larger than at 1 trillion. And I don't know, like if we get to 100 trillion, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know what the upper limit is. Like think about it. I mean, at that point, like LTCM was, I don't know, like 3 trillion. And we thought that was going to like destroy the American economy. If there's enough like leverage in the system where like, let's say that we get to 100 trillion and it is in fact mostly like weird leveraged bets that got us there somehow. Like I think I think Elizabeth Warren's right. That's a huge systemic risk. I don't know what that looks like, but it scares me because like at that point, the FOMO is like all of America. Everyone's in. Your mom's in, your dad's in, my dad's in. I told him not to do it, but he did it anyways because he's an asshole.
A bit like the housing bubble where everyone was in.
Exactly, but like at a magnitude, like many magnitudes larger. And it's weird to think that that's a possibility, but I think that every time I've watched like Bitcoin go up and I've watched more and more people get in, and I've watched like my friend's like 65-year-old mom insist that she get to buy. And like just the number of people that start to come here, the number of old people that come into like our clubhouse rooms and we're doing those and say they want to like liquidate their 401k at the top, or that they want to sell their home or mortgage their home at the top. Like I just see leverage on leverage on leverage, and everyone seems high impetus to get into leverage at the top and low impetus to get into leverage at the bottom because we're stupid. And I mean, like I think leverage on both sides is probably pretty stupid, but we're stupid. So like this is for some reason what we do. We get into leverage at the top. We don't at the bottom. We are scared at the bottom. And I could just see it getting really, really scarily bad.
So then is there ever like an escape velocity, or does the cyclicality just continue and you're basically making a case that the same sort of inhale, exhale continues as Bitcoin still gaps up? Or is there eventually a point where hyper-Bitcoinized world has a lower time preference and people don't lever long into bullshit ape JPEGs?
Call it the forever pump. Is there, I mean, I dream of a world where there's an ever pump. I dream of it. I think that it would be really cool if Bitcoin just kind of like got into its groove and was going up at 8, 9, 12, 15, 20% per year for a while. It'd be great. The problem is like Bitcoin's behaved a certain way, and I don't know that it's going to continue. I don't believe in universal promises. I don't believe that like the Lord of the universe is going to force Bitcoin to act the way it's always acted. I think it could change at any given moment. But so far it's acted this particular way. And the only thing that I can think is that it's probably going to continue acting that way for a little while. And maybe there is an ever pump on the other side of this where we just all sit back and Bitcoin goes forever up and we just all become multi-billionaires as it does that. That's great. Or maybe there's not that world. And I just don't know. But what I do know is that what the behavior that I've seen in previous pumps scares the hell out of me when I think of Bitcoin doing this again 2 or 3 more times. And Bitcoin becoming a 10 trillion or 50 trillion or 100 trillion. I don't know how. I'm not a money guy. I don't know how high that can go. But the higher it goes, the more scared I am. And I see the misbehavior now with people taking all of this extra money that they have and putting it into JPEGs and monkey butts and like whatever the hell it is that they're buying. I see collectibles like Rolex watches going up unprecedented amounts. I see my Beanie Babies now worth quite a bit more than they used to be. I see all sorts of things, baseball cards, Pokemon cards. Like there's no world in which the S&P 500 should be outpaced by like Charizard Shadowless, first edition.
If you go back to Jeff Booth, though, he says when money isn't scarce, everything else is.
Yeah. So, I mean, like people put their money in rocks. And that to me, I don't know what that misbehavior means. All these Bitcoiners like to say like, oh, that's Weimar Germany. I don't know. I'm not like historically knowledgeable enough to know whether that this is a perfect echo of Weimar Germany, but it's misbehavior. And I don't know why, and I don't understand it, but I think it means something.
Well, it's a reflection on massive QE, which has been running since 2008.
Maybe not. I don't know what it means. You might be right, but like we've been printing money for centuries. We've always had some sort of money printing since, the early 1800s, right? Whatever it is.
But if you track, there was always periods of surplus, periods of deficit.
Sure.
We've only had deficit now for 2 decades.
That's true. And maybe this is the extent of like a giant deficit. Like maybe this is what happens. Maybe everyone's right about Weimar Germany. I don't know. But I cannot conceive of a world where over like multiple years, Charizard first edition Shadowless Pokemon cards outpace the S&P. And that weirds me out, especially by how much it's outpacing, right? Like these collectibles are collectibles. They're not supposed to really be stores of value for long periods of time. There's maybe exceptions to this. Like maybe art is an exception. I don't know. There are like sort of like these objects that we've kind of used as bank accounts, houses, art, whatever. Maybe those are exceptions. Maybe Bitcoin sucks the monetary value out of that stuff. I don't know. But I don't think that the exception should be a Pokemon card, right? Or like a royal blue Beanie Baby or something, like a Peanut the Elephant. Like this is weird to me. And it doesn't seem like good behavior. Not just by people, but by an economy. Like an economy shouldn't behave that way.
Yeah, that's the point. I think it's a reflection of the economy rather than people. I mean, people have always collected.
Degenerateness shouldn't be rewarded, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, beer.
Thank you.
It's an orange pill, is that what you said? Oh yeah, that's great. My favorite too. But yeah, degenerateness shouldn't be rewarded to this degree. And like what's interesting right now is like generally when you look at a gambler, the gambler walks into a casino, he takes his $100,000, and that gambler pulls the lever on a few things, and over the course of a night, he loses that $100,000. It might take 40 hours or something like that, or maybe longer, right? Maybe it's a week, but he loses that money over time. Degeneracy is supposed to be that you lose the money that like over time you put in, or at least you break even, best case scenario. But like what I'm watching now is an economy where degeneracy is rewarded to a degree that I'm uncomfortable with. Like I see people aping in, if you will, to these ordinals, doing all sorts of things that should not inure to you huge benefit, but it is. And then the people buying from those people aping it or like selling them are then turning around and selling them for more to the next idiot. And those people are turning around and selling it for more to the next idiot. And it's degeneracy that I've never seen. And it should not be rewarded to that degree, I don't think, in a logical world.
But it's happening in a time where degeneracy is being rewarded from within government. And this isn't conspiracy. You can go and look at the trading records of every senator, almost every senator within US government, their trading records.
I don't know how to drink this.
Not like that.
You meant to tuck that in. You meant to tuck that in. But the trading records of every senator, almost every senator in government,
That didn't work.
has outperformed the S&P.
Yeah.
And-
Well, for different reasons, though. Like those
Yeah,
those
they
people,
have good information.
Those people are trading in non-material public information, right?
Of course, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is you're seeing kind of open corruption from what you would probably class as now
I agree.
celebrity politicians, and you're also seeing that there's no punishment for the mistakes they make in government. You're seeing massive
But
mistakes.
that's
Bear with me. Massive mistakes from within the Fed or the central bank in the UK, and we're now at a time where it's rubbed in our faces that there's a group of people make a group of decisions for them against us. And the implication for us is people can't afford houses or education, can't afford, like in the UK, people can't afford to feed their children or heat their home. They have to make choices. And so I think it's no wonder if you have degeneracy within your government, you're going to have degeneracy amongst your
But it's
electorate.
a different kind of degeneracy. Like there's degeneracy that is legal, right? That's codified in law. Like if you behave this way, you will make money. And then like the senators, like they make that rule for themselves. They go out, they make money by like making bets on things of value, right? Whereas the degeneracy I'm talking about is literally like the casino says, hey, everybody, if you come into our casino, we're actually paying out 63% to you. Like we are going to go bankrupt. Like we are rewarding you for coming and pulling the lever. And like everyone who's like against gambling is like, I don't know about that. I'm not going to go in there. And then everyone who does it walks into the casino and comes out with bags of cash. Like, oh, they're being honest, bro. They're like, it's true. They're like giving you money. Put 100,000 in, you get like 400,000 back. And like that's a different kind of degeneracy. Maybe it's like the politicians rewarding us for allowing them to like steal. I don't know. but it's a different kind of degeneracy, and it's the kind of degeneracy that scares me.
Where's Hodl?
Yeah.
He would say that's the nihilism of our time, right? Yeah.
Nihilism's rewarded in some ways.
Who has a question here for Junseth?
Come on up to the mic, man.
Hey guys, quick question. Since you're a Bitcoin OG and all of us in the room like Bitcoin, maybe other stuff, I'd be really curious to hear what is your biggest argument against Bitcoin? Like what is, you already kind of alluded to it, but not as like what is its fatal point, but if it would fail, like what's the worst thing about it? Because I think for people that are passionate about something, it's also good to think of like what is the thing against it and talk about that. I'd love to hear from you as like someone originally in the
So I'm not a libertarian in any way. And I talk to libertarians all the time, and they like to tell me about hard money and say stupid like tropic words that they learned from Mises. And you know, the libertarians are funny because they've been poor their whole lives, and then they put a bet on Bitcoin, and then some of them got very rich, and they go like, "See, I told you," and you're like, "You've been poor for like 80 years, asshole." So like, I do wonder, like, there's a lot of a thought in the world about like the idea of a deflationary currency not being great for an economy. And I wonder what a world looks like with the deflationary money, and if deflationary money is in fact what we need. Like Bitcoin is money. I don't think there's a doubt about it, but it's a difficult world to think of, the inability where you have this inability to pull forward time preference, right? And how do you take loans out in deflationary currency, especially when it deflates this much? How do you take loans out? Like, how do you pull forward your desire to like send you have a kid, you have to send him to school. How do you pull forward your inability to pay for school without taking out a loan? Like you can't. So how do you do that in a Bitcoin world? Just you have people that just don't go to school because their parents can never afford it. Like what do you do? Like you can't buy a house. Like we just all live under bridges, or like do houses collapse and now they're $4? Like I don't know. But I feel like that loans are an important part of an economy, and I struggle to understand how we do it. And maybe Bitcoin is money. And maybe what we find out is that like debt money, which we've always called fiat money, is also money, and that they're just opposite sides of the same coin, and the government will issue fiat so that they can pull forward preference. And maybe that's what we use to, issue loans. I don't know. But I do wonder about the possibility that maybe you can't run a world on deflationary money. That one weirds me out regularly, because we all, I think, can acknowledge when you think about like time preference and spending habits, it's very difficult to conceive of a world where money is flowing freely and we're all buying, good things and bad things all the time with this thing that we know is going to be more valuable tomorrow.
Do you think Bitcoin might just be this thing that sits on the sidelines like it has been now? It's just an asset people might buy and sell, and never really fulfills the full utopian dream, but never really goes away.
Yeah, I think it could be that. I think that's possible. I don't have an utopian vision. I really am like a watcher. Like I'm sitting on the sidelines and watching it. Like, do I think Bitcoin will like eat the world? It could. I don't know. Like it has potential. It's certainly capable of it. Do I think that's a good thing? I don't know. I don't know what a Bitcoin world looks like. I know that it doesn't look like what Saifedean thinks it looks like, but it looks like something. Like, is it good? Maybe. Is it going to stop wars? Probably not. Libertarians shut up. Like, it's not. People fight. Like, is it going to like defund governments? Maybe. Like, I mean, the question that we talked about me coming to answer was whether like what Bitcoin does for democracy.
Yeah, this was a setup.
And yeah, I think like, I mean, that's a question though. Like, does it give sovereignty back to the individual? Like, what democracy? Are we talking about like shitty UK democracy or like real American like Republic democracy? No, like American democracy is a very different thing, right? Because we have like the country that we are in was set up on behalf of the sovereignty of the individual. We want to be sovereign. We were out in the woods. We were killing bars and shooting ducks and like feeding our families. And then like if you read Gordon Wood, he talks a lot about the American democracy and the American experiment. And it's important because like the American Revolution is different than all other revolutions, right? What we said is we looked at like King George and we were like, he's oppressing us. Meanwhile, like we were the freest people in all of the world, maybe next to like maybe more than the UK, because he wasn't here. There was no one like watching us. We just had to pay taxes. But philosophically, we were so opposed to the notion of being controlled that we revolted and said like even that much touching of us is too much. We want utter freedom because that's what we built. We left you. We came here for freedom. We got our guns. That's what we want. We don't want anything to do with you. Philosophically, we're opposed to that. So American democracy was rooted in this notion of utter and pure sovereignty. So maybe does Bitcoin give that to the world? Maybe. Maybe it does. Maybe that is the completion of the American experiment. Maybe it defunds governments. Maybe it brings us back. Maybe this is the end of the American Revolution and the whole world gets to be America. I don't know. Maybe this adds to our understanding of freedom. This notion that in America, we've codified the things that you're free to do. We've codified them, the idea that there's this God-given right. Where there's a God-given right to freedom of speech, right? There's a God-given right to protect yourself. These are things that in a state of nature, you have the right and ability to do no matter what. No one can stop you from doing them. And we never, ever had that with money. And Bitcoin for the first time gives you the sovereign and particular right to your finances, to spend, to trade. And that's something we didn't know that the government couldn't take away from you. Bitcoin is the manifestation of the God-given right to have your value.
Who's up? There's 50 of you in here.
Yeah.
Gary Gensler. Thank you.
That was a good joke.
Yeah. Has
Anyone
anyone
off
coming
camera,
up?
that wasn't actually Gary. I know that you're wondering.
Kind of looks a little bit like him. But that self-sovereign point is it's kind of an interesting point for me as a British person coming across to America.
I'm so sorry, man.
It's okay. We forgive you. But you have two forms of democracy where we don't. You have a vote, you have a ballot vote, and you have the ability, like Balaji says, you have the ability to vote with your feet. So even if you're unhappy with the vote in your state, you can move from state to state.
Yeah.
And so for me as somebody from the UK, it's we only have one form of democracy. It's pretty shitty. And Bitcoin opens up this whole new world where you can rethink and you can leave a country with your money intact. There's the big story in the Ukraine war. Somebody left with they left the war with their money on their hard drive. Do you think this opens up therefore opportunities throughout the world? This is going to ultimately deliver more forms of democracy in countries where we know that half the population of the world lives under authoritarianism. Do you think this could open that up?
Bitcoin allows for the undermining of regime in certain ways, right? I think that's think about it this way. Let's say Bitcoin's a sideline clown show, right? It just sits there. It doesn't really reach the size that we all think it can, whatever. That doesn't matter. Because if, let's say Bitcoin's $1 and, the blockchain is still chugging along and you're still able to get as much of it as you can, if you have wealth in Ukraine, you can still put it into Bitcoin and on the other side, sell that Bitcoin and have the same amount of wealth wherever you want. So it is a teleporting transport mechanism for value, which by the way, makes it useful, right? Which means that it won't be $1, but that is an use case for it. So you can do this with Bitcoin. And that to me is extremely remarkable and allows you to it empowers people to undermine bad regimes when they get bad enough. I don't think we've seen this yet. I don't know if we'll ever see it, but it's kind of like the American affinity for guns. We have guns just in case, and the result is that the government doesn't do things just in case we use our guns. And so there's a level. There's a level
I just, as an observer, fundamentally disagree with that.
Because you don't know anything about guns. Because you're
I do.
UK guy.
I just think you've had plenty of opportunities to use your guns to oppose the government. It's not happened.
We're never gonna do it until it gets too bad. That's the point. Is the government can push as far as they want, and there is this mechanism that's an elastic mechanism that snaps at some point and brings us right back. So the American sensibility is pretty simple. You can take it as far as you want. Keep going. But there's a point where it's going to get snapped back because it's just too far. I don't know what that point is.
But we have that in every country. We have that in the UK, and we don't have guns.
I mean, you can believe you have that in the UK. I don't believe you do.
No, but we do. I mean, you have it in every country. You can have a revolution without guns.
You can certainly have a revolution without guns. Yeah. But America's very different in that.
I think it's a story some Americans tell themselves to justify
I think that foreigners like to think that.
No,
I don't think you can own Bitcoin without
No,
guns.
I think it's used to. I do. As an observer coming across, I think it's a story some Americans tell themselves to justify endless gun massacres.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't want to get into a huge gun debate because you'll lose. But no kidding. No, but I think that's what's that?
Because you got the guns.
We got the guns.
We're in New York. Nobody's got a gun.
No one's got a gun in New York. I don't have a gun on me in case there's any feds here. No, but I do think that is, at least for me, like I don't remember exactly what we were saying, but like the sovereignty really matters. Like Bitcoin is sovereign money in that way. Like you get to have sovereignty over your finances. And I think that's something that we've never had. We've always had, particularly in the digital world, we've always had to like allow someone else to house our money, hold it, and make it easier for us. Holding your own money, as Bitcoiners know, is the hardest thing in the world. Contained value wants to explode. It wants to get stolen. It wants to get hacked. It wants you to make a mistake and lose it. And it is the hardest thing in the world. It's a responsibility that frankly, makes me understand how we constructed the financial system the way we did. And it actually leaves me in awe at the fact that we take our money, we take our contained value, we take millions and sometimes billions of dollars, and we put them in these buildings, and we let those people have that money, holding it for us, and they don't lose it. That blows my mind.
Right. Any more questions? Come around anyway.
I wonder what your thoughts are. So, as a Bitcoiner, I've followed the hodl, pathway, right? So, I believe that my time horizons have shifted to the long horizon, far out horizon. 4 trips to El Salvador have shown me something that's very important about Bitcoin as we get to the next stage, and that is that spending Bitcoin, spending Satoshis, and spending them for just about everything you do has a dramatic effect on circular economies, right? And I'm trying to figure it out myself, but if you think of a supply chain as a linear process where, somebody grows a crop, coffee, let's say, puts it into the combine, it gets, distributed around the world. Supply chains have gotten very efficient, much as social media has gotten very efficient around communications between people. And the sacrifice we make is we give up our privacy. We do social media for convenience, and we pass our valuable data over to
whomever wants
monarch.
it.
Huh?
We don't usually care. China or whoever else wants it. Yeah.
Exactly. But in a circular economy, it's much different, because instead of the end result being a shareholder that gets a payout from Starbucks, let's say, for the profits of Starbucks, making that supply chain efficient. In a circular economy, and this happens now regularly in El Salvador, and the effects are pretty dramatic in terms of a rising economy and a much more, positive attitude by the people that are in that economy about the future. They can educate their kids now. They can do things. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on this spend Bitcoin versus hold Bitcoin forever. Yeah?
This is the longest question ever.
I know.
Well, like I said, this is the deflationary problem, right? It's hard to conceive of a world where I want to unload my Bitcoin, right? Because it's going to be worth more tomorrow than today. Meanwhile, oh no, you nearly killed us.
Good catch.
That was a very good catch. Well done.
Get that man a beer.
And I hate to give him credit, but Roger Ver said, I think in 2014, right before Vitalik went up and pitched us Ethereum, he was talking about at the 2014 TNABC, the North American Bitcoin Conference. He says, if you want to spend Bitcoin, he says, spend it and then just buy back what you would have in Bitcoin immediately. And I always thought that was an interesting piece of advice, because it was one of those things that kicked me in the nuts. I was like, how come I've never thought of that? How stupid that if I'm going to spend and I want to have, my Bitcoin, I can just take the money that I would have spent on the hot dog, if the hot dog is for Bitcoin, and immediately buy the Bitcoin back and be, no worse for wear. That removes that problem of the timing But there's a lot of things I think right now that like make it really difficult to spend. The tax treatment in America of Bitcoin, all sorts of other things. What we need for Bitcoin to do is we need Bitcoin to disrupt in a way that causes governments to deal with the consequences of doing things like spending. And for me, until that stuff's worked out, until we have maybe more privacy, maybe via Lightning Network or something like confidential transactions, a lot of that stuff, like until that stuff is kind of worked out, I think the best move for me is to just hold and wait until those things are worked out. And I know that these things are coming, and that's the alpha that I have in Bitcoin. I think that like a lot of people find it hard to hold. There's a lot of things about Bitcoin that are hard. And that's why, like, for me, I think the compensation of holding Bitcoin is in waiting for those things to get worked out and knowing that most of the public doesn't even know those questions exist. And that to me, like, where's the value in Bitcoin? The value in Bitcoin is as those things get worked out, Bitcoin is better and better and better money. So hodl, spend, I mean, do what your heart tells you, I guess. But for me, until Bitcoin is kind of like cooked and finished, I'm holding.
I think you need to do both because we need to support Bitcoin companies as well. So you have to spend a little.
I don't think that Bitcoin companies are companies that accept Bitcoin.
No, you know what I mean though. Like it helps support things. Like this Pubkey is supported by Bitcoiners coming down here.
100%. I think this is great.
Yeah.
Bitcoiners come down here, but like, what do you spend at the bar? I gave my credit card.
Oh yeah, but like I know some people do. Like at the football club, we have a number of transactions.
I think it's great. Like
yeah.
I think someone said this recently about one Bitcoin business, and the Bitcoin business does a business where they allow you to bid on NFTs and such, right? And they only accept Bitcoin. Well, that's stupid. You should accept whatever form of money someone wants to pay you.
Yeah.
Unless you don't believe in like Bitcoin or something, then don't take it. Whatever. But
it's useful, like to have companies like OpenNode and IBEX,
Absolutely.
and like, we need like transaction processes.
There are Bitcoin. There are companies that require that you pay in Bitcoin, right? Like Lightning is a good example. Companies that like you want to do things. Like you want to create sort of this economy where like you want to open up a channel, whatever, you need to pay them in some kind of medium. Well, this is going to be a Bitcoin channel. Bitcoin channels, like what you're putting at risk is Bitcoin. That's what you're putting in there. It's sort of like yield, right? So there is this idea that like those types of companies can exist. But I think a majority of Bitcoin companies should support the infrastructure of Bitcoin. And I mean, like I talked about it earlier, insurance, right? Like I think insurance in Bitcoin is an important thing, but that's a capital market. It's not like it's not trading in Bitcoin. It's trading in dollars. I think maybe the biggest Bitcoin company in the world is the oil markets. Like I think the energy markets are, in fiat, right? And there's a lot of ways in which Bitcoin can touch that. Like where do you think like Bitcoiners are eating up energy in all sorts of places. Wherever there's subsidized energies, there too also is a Bitcoin miner. And what do you think? I mean, the energy companies, maybe someday they'll accept Bitcoin for payment. But the reality is that they're the best thing what they're doing is they're accepting fiat right now. So the Bitcoin company, the mining company, is paying the energy company. Well, I think that makes the energy company a Bitcoin company. I think that these are like all of these like markets all over the world. There are ways in which Bitcoin is going to start touching them and making those companies very wealthy. And they're going to be wealthy in fiat. And Bitcoin's the reason for their wealth. So those are Bitcoin companies. And that, like, to me, the idea of like a circular economy that's all Bitcoin, that's a dream that's far off. I'm excited about that world. Where maybe Bitcoin's a little bit more stable. Maybe tomorrow it's not going to be 300% worth or 300% more than it is today. But like the world in which the circular economy is Bitcoin's far off. And right now I think we have to accept that Bitcoin companies are fiat companies. And wherever Bitcoin touches fiat companies, we are Bitcoiners. We are joining the world.
Let's fucking go.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Mark Moss's 3 revolutionary cycle theory? I know you are because it's been on your show, but
not supremely. Like
just like the political, financial, technological revolution all converging at the same time right now.
Never heard of it, but that sounds pretty good.
Well, in short, basically every 250 years or so, a political revolution happens. A financial revolution happens around like every 80 years, and a technological revolution happens around every 50 years, give or take a few years. And for the first time since I think the Industrial Revolution, they're converging now. So I wanted to know your thoughts on Bitcoin being like the catalyst of these 3 revolutionary cycles converging where we're going from a peak centralization, he says. It's like a pendulum, and we're swinging back to decentralization. Obviously, the financial part speaks for itself with Bitcoin, and the technological part speaks for itself. So it has like a little piece of all three, and I wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I nearly always reject anything that talks about cycles. And I don't believe in cycles. I don't believe in them at all because it's like astrology. And so, I mean, like, I think that those are types of revolutions that can happen. Technological revolution, that's been happening. I think it's a continual process. Like, Apple starts in the late 70s or 80s and grows to where it is today. Like, I think the personal computer is a technological revolution. All of this stuff, like computers generally. I don't know where you would pinpoint the revolution for any of these things happening. The Industrial Revolution starts in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It's it's these like little mills that have leather bands between things and are using water basically to run these whatever, like these looms and such. I don't think you can point to a moment where that is a revolution. It's a revolution for 100 years.
Right. Can I just to add? So the technological revolution part is like, he says he uses the iPod as a good example. Like, it's a great technology, but it's not a technological revolution. So a technological revolution is something that changes the course of humanity and it drives financial markets. So 60 years ago, we had the microprocessor, which led to computers. 60 years before that, we had steel. I think it was the steel and engines or oil, something like that. 60 years before that, electricity. So it's not just a new technology. It's something that changes the course of humanity and leads financial
There's
markets.
all sorts of these. Like, you have the air conditioner. The invention of the air conditioner is one of the greatest moments in human history. For the first time, you have the entirety of Latin America and South America opened up to business. And there's all sorts of these moments. And if you look at GDP over history from like year zero to now, like, it's not like we have a lot of great data from year zero. But like, you can look at, like, you can kind of chart it out. And it's like dot, 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 dot. And then, you hit the Industrial Revolution and like it's a parabola, right? That's how it is. And that's, to me, everything is much more gradual. I don't believe in these like moments of revolution where you can say like, this is the invention. Like, when did the combustion engine, the train, like all of these things come at moments where like there's sort of these conglomerations of inventions that exist and are out there. And someone at some point would have invented the train, whether it was the original inventor or like it had happened a little bit later. But like, these things are all on the table, and they're on the table because of like this gradual move towards progression, towards progress. And when you look at the chart of something like GDP, there's not moments where it just goes boop and just like pops way up. What you see is it's just gradual. Year after year, it's gradual, no matter what's invented. There's no moment where you can circle it and go, there's the revolution. This is the year where everything changed. It's literally the most gradual chart you've ever seen. And then it is up and straight up, but it's up and straight because it's a parabola. That's how progress always works. And I don't see a moment in history where and I say the same thing with Bitcoin. Or like, Bitcoin is a new invention. I think it's revolutionary. I think it's incredible, but you see the adoption. What's happening in the wake of Bitcoin coming up, there are scam after scam after scam that completely they completely mute the effect of Bitcoin and what it could be doing for humanity. It's stealing money from people. All of these scams that people are leveraging their money into are taking money from people. And that's the result of this revolutionary technology. Bitcoin exists. These scams persist. They're going to persist for a long time. People will take money. Bitcoin is going to advance the world at a slightly higher rate than it was before. And it's going to be amazing for all of us. We're going to be like, think about like a 2% change. That means the world's GDP, the world's like the things that we would have done double in terms, instead of 72 years from now or whatever it would be, like a doubling of what we have today, just because like Bitcoin improves things 2% worldwide is going to happen over the course of the next 36 years. If it's 4%, it's even better. And like, so these nominal changes in history, they increase the parabolic effect of any moment like of the future. We get a future that looks very different, much faster. But I don't think that you can point to a point in history easily and say, this is the invention that changed the world.
All right. So there's a crypto meetup down in the bar. I think we should go and fight them.
Before we close out, though, let's give a massive shout out to Pubkey.
Yes,
for putting
Thank
on
you,
the event.
Pubkey.
And Thomas.
They've let us record out their spot all week. And I think if you live in the city, make sure you get down here and support these guys.
Yes, a big thanks to Junseth. If you didn't offend you, I don't know who you are. If he's offended you, then that's just Junseth. Thank you all for coming in. Thank you to my friend Rich Roll for coming in. Thank you for Luke for coming in. Thank you to everyone who come in. Thank you to Jeremy for doing all the camera work all week. Thank you all for coming. This is the first one of these. We've learned a lot in a very short amount of time. If you've got any feedback, good or bad, just drop me an email. You know I'll reply. Let's go and get a drink.